I never thought small moments could change the way I looked at my life, but sometimes they do. My name is Linda, and for most of my life, I've been someone who simply got through the days. I worked, I cooked, I cleaned, I tried to keep the house in order, and most of all, I tried to raise my son, Daniel, as best as I could. Life was not easy for us. After my husband passed away several years ago, it felt as if the world had suddenly gone quiet, like half of me had been taken away. Daniel was only 15 at the time, and I remember staring into his young eyes and wondering how we were going to get through the storm together. We both grieved differently. He stayed quiet most of the time, shutting himself away in his room, while I tried to keep myself busy so I wouldn't fall apart. Sometimes I worried I was losing him, too, because no matter how much I reached out, he seemed further and further away. Now, years have passed, and Daniel is a young man of 19. He has grown taller than me, with broad shoulders and the kind of quiet strength that reminds me of his father. And yet, sometimes, I still saw that boy who once cried silently into his pillow at night, believing I couldn't hear him. I always did. Mothers always know. One ordinary Tuesday evening, something happened that reminded me just how deeply Daniel carried his heart, and it changed everything for me. I was in the kitchen that evening, standing over a sink full of dishes, tired from a long day at work. My hands moved automatically, scrubbing plates, rinsing cups, stacking them one by one. I didn't even notice Daniel walk in until he leaned against the counter and cleared his throat. "Mom," he said softly, almost hesitant. I looked up, startled, wiping my hands on a dish towel. "Hey, honey, what's up? You're home earlier than I thought." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he fiddled with something behind his back, and I raised an eyebrow. "What are you hiding there?" I teased, trying to lighten the mood. When he brought his hand forward, my breath caught. It was a small bouquet of daisies, tied together with a simple ribbon. My heart skipped because daisies were my favorite flowers. His father used to bring them home for me after work, just because. "Daniel," I whispered, my throat tightening. "Where did you—" "I know you've been tired lately," he interrupted gently. "And I just wanted to say thank you. For everything. For holding us together. For being strong even when I wasn't." Tears stung my eyes. My son, my quiet, guarded Daniel, had thought of me. He had remembered the one flower that always made me smile, and he had gone out of his way to bring them to me. It wasn't the flowers themselves, it was the thought, the gesture, the love behind it. I set the towel aside and pulled him into my arms. For a moment, he stiffened, embarrassed like any 19-year-old boy might be. But then his arms wrapped around me, strong and steady, and I let myself cry into his shoulder. "Your dad used to do this," I whispered. "Bring me daisies." "I know," he said quietly. "That's why I got them." We stood there for a long time, neither of us speaking, just holding on. In that moment, it felt like the gap that had once stretched between us had finally closed. From that day, something shifted in our relationship. Daniel and I began talking more, not just about school or chores, but about life, about memories, about how much we missed his dad. He shared things he had never told me before, like how he used to stay up at night worrying if I would ever smile again. And I told him how scared I had been of losing him, too. Little by little, we grew closer. And it all began with that simple, unexpected gesture. That night, after he went to bed, I placed the daisies in a vase on the dining table. I sat in the quiet and let myself feel a strange mix of sadness and hope. My husband was gone, yes, but through Daniel, a part of him lived on. I realized that my son wasn't just growing up. He was stepping into the role of a man who carried the kindness, thoughtfulness, and strength of his father, and at the same time, carving his own path. The daisies eventually wilted, as flowers do, but I pressed one between the pages of my journal. A keepsake. A reminder. Because sometimes the smallest gestures have the greatest impact. And for me, it was the moment I realized I was no longer walking through life alone. Daniel had grown into someone who would stand beside me, just as I had always stood beside him.